There's no spiking of football. There's two people did lose their lives. There was a lot of things that infected this case, like politics, that's sent it off the rails really early on. And so there are no winners. I mean, Kyle now gets to live his life as a free young man.
Continuing our coverage now of the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict, prosecutors might have lost their best chance at convicting Rittenhouse of something when the judge dismissed that weapons charge. Rittenhouse had been charged with being a minor in possession of a dangerous weapon, but his attorneys said an exception in the state law allows minors to possess shotguns and rifles as long as they are not short-barreled. We're talking about the gun rights aspects of this case now with Nick Clark. He's the president of Wisconsin Carry. So, Nick, we appreciate having you on the show, and I just want to get your reaction to the verdict, really, for gun advocates like you.
Yeah, so to be quite honest, like when Kyle was first charged, I made the comment to many people that I didn't think he would ever be convicted in Kenosha because a fairly selected jury in Kenosha, they were there that night. They knew how lawless things had gotten and they knew how threatening and dangerous things had been. But also, I'm actually surprised, conviction takes a unanimous 12-person jury, but acquittal takes a unanimous 12-person jury also. So for that reason, when it wasn't a quick verdict, I was actually surprised that it wasn't a hung jury because I thought that after a day or two, after a day, we were going to find a situation where they couldn't agree that the jury would be split, much like the population is. So I'm actually surprised that it was a full acquittal, not because I don't think it was justified, that I think it was the right decision, just that 12 jurors were able to come to a unanimous decision.
Does this shine a light on anything with self-defense or Wisconsin gun laws that you think needs to change?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the first things people should understand is that you can use force to protect property. You just can't use deadly force to protect property. But when people are protecting their property and then they're attacked, then it's not using force to defend property. It's using force to defend themselves. So you are allowed to defend your property and you are allowed to use force.
But that wasn't Kyle Rittenhouse's property.
You're allowed to, in the self-defense law in Wisconsin, it's called defense of self and others. So you can defend others, you can defend someone else's property. Look, if you live in Kenosha, let's say if you have a house in Kenosha and a business, you can't be in two places at once. CarSource had 3 car sources, only 2 owners. So they needed someone else to come help them. It would be impossible to protect your business by yourself. And that's the reason that people came from out of town.
I know you've told me in the past, because I've interviewed you before, Nick, that you advocate for responsible gun ownership. Do you think a 17-year-old showing up out of town, emotionally charged, is that responsible gun ownership? Should that be allowed?
And especially having seen how Kyle acted that night. I mean, it was textbook in terms of gun safety. He always had the gun pointed down. He never had his finger on the trigger. You see that throughout the night. I'm actually surprised because sometimes younger people aren't as disciplined with gun safety as he was. Look, what happened was people saw what happened on Monday night in Kenosha, that Monday night with people trying to defend their businesses, getting hit with bricks when they're just trying to put out fires in their business, their livelihood. And people couldn't take that. And the police, the National Guard was not called until Wednesday. People saw that. And while it's an interesting paradigm, because would I say to my 17-year-old stepson, hey, go down to Kenosha? I mean, no, but it's difficult for me as a matter of principle to criticize someone who did, because 17-year-olds and high school seniors see what happens after September 11th and sign up for the military. I mean, they're very young and passionate.
Do you worry what Kyle Rittenhouse did will now, and the fact that he got acquitted, will now encourage open season, I guess, as they would say?
No, not at all. I mean, certainly, I don't think anybody wants to go through what Kyle did, even though he's been acquitted, what he's had to go through for the last year. No one would want to go through that. With that said, people still want to support their right to self-defense. And even in terms of riots, if those happen again, people want to be able to protect their business and their properties. For some people, it won't even be a choice. Look, they have no choice. They want to protect their home, their business. And if they have multiple locations, they're going to need help doing that. And there's not a lot of people to step up to help. So you have to take the help from the people that are willing to do it. I might not have wanted my stepson to go to Kenosha, but it's difficult for me to criticize someone who did, as a matter of principle and passion, wanting to go out there and help and try to protect people.
Should he be held up as a hero?
it's difficult to say hero because with my role, I've talked to lots of people who've had to use their gun in self-defense, and having to kill someone, that's not something that is it's unfortunate. I mean, he's not a hero for having to shoot people. I would call him principled and brave for going to Kenosha to help protect businesses. Having to take someone's life is nothing that we would, and even people who've had to use their gun in self-defense would say that's not, heroic isn't the term to use. It's very unfortunate. I think it was best said during the aftermath of the verdict by a representative of the family, there's no winners here. Kyle's going to have to deal with that for the rest of his life, just like people who came back from war that had to take another person's life. Look, law-abiding citizens, it's not normal to have to take another person's life. It's very difficult, and he's going to have to deal with that for a long time.
Okay. Nick Clark, thank you.
My pleasure.
Coming up, switching gears for our final segment, we'll take a look at how Wisconsin schools performed during the pandemic.